Hey, hello everyone and welcome to Extreme Graphics Tech. Well, it's been a while since I made a video, but on today's video I need to talk about this beauty that you see right here, and that's none other than the Intel B580. Wow, it's been a while since I've been so excited by a GPU like I've been with this one. And I wasn't going to cover it because, well, you know, this is a very small channel. I don't make any money out of it, like $5 a month or something. So it's hard for me to justify paying for this sort of products when I know I'm not going to recoup the money. However, when Intel announced the spec and the price, I really wanted it. I want this in my GPU rotation for new games coming out, and I need to test it and put it out there and just give you my my opinion on it, because I think it's honestly, frankly, awesome product for the price. Okay, so the rumors are saying that the next GT RTX 5060 is coming with 8 gigabytes. Guys, you know my position. I don't think 8 gigabytes is a bad thing if you already have 8 gigabytes, but no new GPU that you're going to buy for gaming should come with 8 gigabytes. You should not 100% buy any GPU that only has 8 gigabytes, especially because we know that Nvidia is going to price that GPU probably above $300. If that GPU comes out above $200, to me it's dead on the water, just by release. So when Intel announced that the B580 was coming with 12 gigabytes of VRAM and just $250, I said, okay, I will have to buy it and test it, because that's going to be an amazing and incredible price if the performance is there and if they fix most of the problems they had before. And oh boy, what a nice product this is. To begin with, this is a beautiful GPU. This is the, limited edition, they say. I don't know how limited they are, to be honest. But as you can see, the design is really, really nice. I have to give kudos to Intel, because they're making beautiful and simple, but nice and good looking cards. That's the same with the A750 that I test here on the channel. And now we're doing the same with the B580, and this is really looking good. So, having said that, you are wondering, okay, Angelo, let's talk and now show me the benchmark. And I'm going to do that, but before I do, I have to say you two things. The first one is that this GPU, I'm going to be testing it today all by itself using my normal methods, which is not to show you how many FPS this thing can do, but setting the game in a configuration that I think it looks nice and you still get around 60 FPS. Because my point is to show you how good you can play with it. Then, if I'm playing on high 1440p, that you can get better performance out of it if you lower the settings and you lower the resolution or use a more aggressive XeSS profile, for example. So my point here is not to show you how many frames you can get in a low configuration, 1080p and things like that. I just want to show you that you can achieve, or what you can achieve depending on the sort of game you're playing, a decent level from my point of view, like a good combination of resolution and quality and frame rate. That's what I try to achieve with my benchmark, just to make them a little bit different than the rest. And the second thing I have to say is that because this channel is very small, I need all of you to subscribe, like, and share this video, because otherwise I won't have the money to buy this sort of stuff to bring it to you guys. So I need all the help you can get me, and all I'm asking is for you to subscribe to this channel. Do it now before you forget, because then you wait to the end of the video, then you watch something else and you completely forget that you had to subscribe to my channel. So please do it now and will help me a lot. So without further ado, let's see the benchmarks. Okay, this is the first game I was supposed to test, which was Batman Arkham Knight, and the reason I wanted to test this game is because this game didn't work on the ARC 750. You can make it work using like the XVK and stuff like that, but normally it doesn't work. So I thought maybe this was already fixed in the new GPUs or with the new drivers, and it's clear that there is still a lot of work to do, because this game still does not work on the new Intel ARC B580. So that means there is still driver issues with older games, since we're going to be testing some, just because this is one of the areas that the ARC 750 didn't work very good. So it wasn't a good start, I have to say. Then after this, I decided to test Alan Wake, which is the original, which is a DirectX 9 game, and as you can see, the performance is not very good. So 4K with max settings, this is what we get. We get a game that is running around 20 FPS, even though the GPU is barely being used. So for some reason, this game is not able to use the full power of the GPU. This is again a problem for the Intel ARC. If people want to play older games with them, then you will have to check if that game runs or not in the GPU, because unfortunately this is something that is still happening, and I wish this GPU gets more popular and people start complaining about more of this stuff. So maybe Intel go back and fix manually some of these games and start giving at least decent performance. Because on some games like this one, Deus Ex Human Revolution, the game runs extremely well. As you can see here, 4K max settings, and we can get in excess of 200 FPS at times, which means that in DirectX 11 it seems to behave a lot better. Even if it's not perfect on every single game, this is an more than acceptable performance, even if there are like little hitches here and there, which I'm not sure if this is due to the GPU, to the driver, or to the game itself, but at least I would call this extremely playable. So you won't have any issues with this one. This is one of those games that you want to replay at a better quality with this GPU. But then I tested like the recent Deus Ex Mankind Divided. I don't know if the performance is right, because I don't remember how heavy this game is, especially on a similar GPU. But you know, you get very good frames, but the frames are not like evenly paced. There is a lot of little micro stutterings, as you can see in the frame time. So I'm not sure which is a fault here, if it's the Intel card, the drivers, or the game is the way it behaves. I don't think so. I don't remember it being like this. So I will say there is still work to do, even for some DirectX 11 games, which is a shame, because I think in this case the Intel ARC is very good, but not for some of the older games. Because then we test, for example, Far Cry 4, and the game runs extremely well, no stuttering, no hitches, everything seems to be running the way it's supposed to. Once again, 4K max settings, everything maxed out, since they are all games. An Intel ARC B580 with 12 GB of VRAM should be more than enough to play any of these games at very good quality. And in the case of Far Cry, we do get that. So yeah, that's a... You know, it's unfortunately a mixed bag here, and you will have to check what sort of games you want and see if anybody has tested that game specifically. There are ways around them, like using the XVK in many games fixes the problem, but then that's something you will have to do manually, which is not the scope of this benchmark that I'm doing, okay? Now, starting with some of more modern games, in this case Black Myth Wukong. As you can see here, this game fortunately supports XeSS, and I'm not sure if they updated the game, but it looks a lot less sharpened to me, which is a good thing in this case, because it used to look very sharp and it was a very good look. But I don't know if it's that or it's just XeSS, because there was a patch the day I was testing this or the day before. Anyway, as you can see here, we can play on 1440p XeSS, 65% at medium settings. You cannot activate any ray tracing here, because the game will tank the performance, which is a shame, because the Intel ARC B580 is really good when it comes to ray tracing for the price, and we are going to be checking that later on. But unfortunately, this is not the game that is going to show you that. But as you can see, you can have a very good experience. But now this is a game that I tested at 1080p now, and as you can see, I didn't get like the performance, the better performance I was expecting for. So this is a weird car, because it seems like this car it will behave better at 1440p. Like, I think the fact that it's asking more for the GPU is meaning the GPU is doing more. But I don't know, it's kind of weird, because then at 1080p you will expect it to go, you know, have a much better performance, and sometimes I feel that the difference in performance is not that high, and we're going to be seeing this across the different games that I'm testing, which there are a lot of them. So the next game I tested is obviously Dying Light 2 in many configurations, okay? So we're going to be using this one for many things. So the first thing you can see here is that I am using 1440p XeSS Balance Ultra RT preset, and the game is running at around 60 FPS. It goes a little bit down, it goes a little bit up, but in general it is around 60 FPS. Maybe I could have used like a more aggressive XeSS format, like maybe performance. The thing is, I wish I could have in this game XeSS frame generation, because that will be a godsend in this case, and we will have frames in excess of 80 or even 90 probably, which will make the game run much smoother. But well, this is it. Now I wanted to go a little bit, take the things to the next step, and I play the game at 4K XeSS performance with Ultra RT preset. And I think it's playable. I find 40 FPS to be a good option for many, and it's a good point between 30 and 60 FPS if you want to play like a 4K. I think the image is very stable. This is one thing that Dying Light does very good, even with XeSS. Very stable image, and it looks quite amazing with Ultra RT and everything. So imagine if I could do this plus frame generation with XeSS, it will be amazing. So I don't think this is a bad result. You can obviously do different configuration, and we're going to see that in a little bit. So the last thing I'm going to be testing with Ultra RT is 1080p XeSS quality, and in this case, of course, we are above 80 FPS and the game will run perfectly fine. We have to be honest here, this is not a GPU for 4K. Okay, I'm just testing the capabilities and how far you can take it. This is a GPU that most people are going to be using at 1440p or 1080p. So from my point of view, this is running very good at the moment. You can see here, Ultra RT preset with a sub 250 or a $250 GPU with 12 gigabytes of VRAMs, which is, for me, is the better part, considering the RTX 5060 rumors are saying it's going to be 8 gigabyte GPU. So nobody should buy that. Honest to God, nobody should buy that. But yeah, this is running really good. Now I tested the same 4K with Dying Light 2, but in this case, using no RT, just the Ultra preset using XeSS performance, and you can see now that we are above 60 FPS most of the time. So this is a very good result, and as you can see, you can experiment a lot with the GPU because it can give you more than you think depending on the conditions and the support for the scaling solution, which fortunately the Intel XeSS is much better than FSR, like miles ahead. It's not DLSS level, but it's much closer. So that's an advantage you can get with the Intel card that you're not going to get with AMD. Maybe FSR 4 is going to be great, but there are more games supporting XeSS than there are going to be supporting FSR 4. Another old game that I tested after it was the Final Fantasy 15, which is a DirectX 11 game, and the results are quite decent, I would say. It's not perfect 60 FPS, but we are playing at 4K max settings, which once again, I don't think is the target for this GPU, but I want to take things to the next level. And remember, this is a game that didn't run very well, even on an RTX 2080 Ti at the time. And they had to use DLSS first generation for this game, which doesn't look that amazing. It's not, the worst, but it's not that great. And the fact that we're running like this with this GPU is not a bad thing. If you play a 1440p, of course you're going to get more than 60 FPS. So for me, this is a win. But talking about Final Fantasy, we continue with Final Fantasy 16. And in this case, I was able to keep the game at 1440p XeSS balance, medium settings, but keeping the high textures due to the 12 gigabytes of VRAM. And as you can see, it's running quite good. This is not a very well optimized game, so it's running quite decent. But even if you're seeing those 70 to 60 FPS there are situations while I was playing that it did go under 60 to around 55, but I don't think it's that big of a deal because the performance was still very good. So I wouldn't call it a big issue, because probably if you had a VRR monitor, you wouldn't even notice that it went to 55. So that's, for me, is a win in this regard with this very heavy game and the Intel ARC B580. Now, Ghost of Tsushima, what can I say? This is an extremely well optimized game. You can see it here. I'm looking 1440p XeSS quality, very high preset, and we are above 80 FPS. So there is not much to say here, other than I wish this game supported XeSS frame generation, because I would have loved to see how many frames we can get out of this. Yes, this is a game that will allow me to use FSR frame generation, but I didn't think in this case I should have been using different technologies. I think the point is to show the Intel ARC B580, And well, since there is no, I try to avoid using any other technology where I could. If the game didn't have XeSS, then I will use something else. But in this case, I think anyway, we don't need the frame generation, but I would have loved to test it. So seeing how good the result was, I tried to, once again, 4K XeSS balance. I think the boards here are destroying me. Still with very high preset, you can see we're keeping 60 FPS most of the time. There is areas of the game with lots of vegetation and moving things that it goes at around 50 something. Okay, so you can either be a little bit more aggressive with the XeSS, you can go performance and still keep a very nice image, or lower the preset too high and you probably will keep those FPS above 60. As you can see here, this is an area with lots of things when we open to that word, and it goes a little bit under 50, but I still think it's very good considering we are playing a 4K. And once again, this is not a GPU that was made for that, but still you can experiment. On God of War Ragnarok is another game that you can experiment and try to get the best options possible. And in my case, a 1440p with XeSS quality and the high preset, we're getting a very nice image, we're getting nice FPS, and the game looks awesome. This is probably not the heaviest part in the game, but in the worst case scenario, you can put XeSS to balance and still keep the high preset, or you can play at 1080p or lower the preset and be more aggressive with XeSS. It will depend a lot of what is that you're looking, more FPS, better image quality. It depends. For me, it's always about image quality, so I prefer 60 FPS. I'm already happy, and here you can see that we are sometimes in excess of 90, so everything is very well balanced for. Hogwarts Legacy is a game that really surprised me because I was expecting a much worse performance, but you can see here a 1440p XeSS balance and high settings plus all the RTFX on medium, we are getting around 65 FPS. We can go up and down. However, there are some areas where I don't know if it's loading data or what it's doing, where the game does get a little bit weird. As you can see here, it goes really down for a little bit. It's like loading data, and then when it's loaded, it's okay. It looks 20 something, and then look up again. So I'm not quite sure what's happening there, or if it's Intel for all the games fault, but I would say that in general, the game is very playable and with a great image quality in general with all the RT settings active. Horizon Forbidden West is also one of the best looking games that there are out there, and Intel here you can see that is going to be an amazing video card for this game. You can see that we're playing once again with 1440p XeSS quality, high settings, and I'm sure that Nixes will update these games to add the latest versions of XeSS with frame generation and everything, so I'm very curious to see what happens. But yeah, we are playing really good quality, very stable image at 1440p high settings, no problems whatsoever, even using XeSS quality. So after seeing how well the game ran, of course I was going to try once again 4K, and I just wanted to see how it goes. And you can see here on 4K with XeSS performance, we have to lower to medium settings, and then we have this weird issue here in the reflections. Is the only problem I could see. Not very big problem, but there is, and I don't know if that's related to XeSS or medium settings or the combination of both, XeSS performance. But I think the image quality is very stable, very clean, very nice, and we are above 60 FPS. So I think this is another win for the Intel ARC B580, that even though it's it's not made for 4K, I think you should experiment, because if you want to play a 4K, if you set the right settings on some games, you can. So I think that's important to not limit yourself to say, oh, this is a 1080p or a 1440p card. Just experiment with the settings, you'll be surprised. Here in the case of The Last of Us Part 1, it's one of those games that does not support XeSS, so the only option we have is FSR. And using high settings, FSR balance 1440p, you can keep the high texture because we have enough RAM for that. You can see that the game is going to be running very, very good and very stable. If you go to very high settings for the preset, the game goes under 60 FPS. It seems to be very heavy. I'm not quite sure what the graphical difference is, but when you do that, the game does goes under 60. Not all the time, but like half the time. So I would recommend high settings for this game if you want to run it above 60 FPS all the time. So this is another win for me for the Intel ARC B580. And now we come to one of the issues that I found with this game, and I don't know what the problem is here, if it's the game at fault, the drivers at fault. So I think honestly it has to be Intel. and that needs to optimize better for this game. And now, don't get me wrong, as you are seeing right now, the game is running beautiful. There's no issues whatsoever. Very high setting, XeSS quality. You can even activate frame generation from AMD, but I didn't here, and you can see that everything is running very, very good. The problem with this engine and the drivers that Intel has made is when you activate ray tracing. And why I said this engine, you're going to see why, but it's when you activate ray tracing. And here you can see another issue, so that's why I think it's an Intel problem. This game for some reason will stop for 1 second and then continue. No idea what's going on. But when we activate full RT, you can see that the frames drop hard. Much harder than they should, considering what we know about this GPU. They go from 140 to like 60, and that is a big performance loss. Even if we're still above 60 FPS, which is 100% playable, I feel like this you see, once again it stopped, and it happened in both cases. And as you can see, there has to be something wrong with the Intel drivers in this case. The game is playable, but I'm not sure if some people won't get mad about those little issues. And I said the problem is the engine, because on Ratchet & Clank, even though I didn't have the freeze problem, I do have that if you activate any ray tracing effect, any of them, even ambient occlusion, in the lowest settings, the ray tracing and the performance of the game goes to under 10 FPS. No matter what effect and at what level you activate, they go down hard. So that's why I think there is an issue on the drivers and the engine, or the way this game works, because it happens on Ratchet & Clank and Spider-Man, which is my belief that they use exactly the same engine. So there is something that Intel needs to work out here and fix this issue. So I don't know if anyone wants to send this video to an Intel engineer and check what's going on. That would be great, because I think this shouldn't be a big issue to solve driver level. So I don't know, hopefully they will fix this. Now, this is one of those games that is a mystery. And you remember when I said that sometimes when you ask more of the GPU seems to behave better? Well, this is a prime example of what I meant. Look, this is a 1440p XeSS performance, medium settings with no RT. And you can see here the game is not running at its best. I'm barely, around 60 FPS. It's not bad, it goes up and down, it's very playable, it looks great and everything, but I feel like I'm doing a lot of sacrifice to get to those 60 FPS per FPS, like XeSS on performance, just medium settings and not using RT. It seems a little bit too much for me, but it's okay. The game looks great, and it plays great. That's fine. But then I thought, okay, fine. If this is how the game performs, then what if I don't mind playing at 30 FPS? How much can I ask of this game? And in this case, you're going to see some of the most weird results. I upped the level of XeSS to balance. I took the game to epic settings and activated RT on. 3 things that should really cripple the GPU, considering how we were playing before. But still, we get above 40 FPS, which is not what I was expecting. I was expecting to be much closer to 30 FPS than we are seeing here. We are in the above 40 most of the time. So even though we lowered the XeSS preset, we upped the graphic settings to epic and we activated ray tracing. So you see what I mean? So it seems like now that we are asking more of the GPU, the performance is more closer to what I was expecting. I was expecting to get better performance without ray tracing, but when they activate everything. So yeah, I think there are still things to work out here, but it's not a bad result. Starfield, well, this is another game that you need to, it doesn't support XeSS, so it's not going to be, the smoothest game out there, because you have to use FSR. So you have to use FSR around 55% with medium settings if you want to play at 1440p above 60 FPS. But this is in this area, which is one of the worst case scenarios. There are other cities that are also very heavy, but I think, this is going to be your worst case scenario. So when you go to indoors or other areas, you're going to be easily above 80 or even 100 FPS. So it's this disparity between areas that is going to cause some issues in terms of, not providing exactly the FPS that made you have expecting. But I still think the game is running very well, all things considered. And so the ARC B580 is, if this is a game you want to play, you will be able to play it, no problems whatsoever. And now, of course, couldn't be a complete benchmark without Cyberpunk 2077. And I started strong, right? So this is a 4K XeSS performance on Ultra preset, and yeah, I think it looks amazing. This is another game that really has a very good integration of XeSS, and the image looks quite good at 4K, as you can see here. And I don't know, I couldn't see it, as you see there, it's going at very strong 60 FPS. So I was really surprised. I was expecting a little bit worse, but yeah, no, everything seems to be running quite decent. And at the Ultra preset, this is much better than any console of the the current generation, PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X. So this is a very good result for a $250 GPU. But then I wanted to, take it to the next level, and now I try 1440p XeSS balance with the RT Ultra preset. This is not overdrive. This is the highest RT preset without overdrive. And once again, this looks amazing, runs very well, and is much better than any console, which only activates ray tracing for shadows. Here we have reflections, global illumination, shadows, everything. Look at that water, how it looks good, and even under. And this is the first time I see this guy under this little, pool of water. I wasn't expecting to find a car and a dead guy in here, but yeah, that's Cyberpunk for you guys. Little secrets everywhere. So yeah, that's one of the most surprising results today. Is you see, this is why I say this car is very good for ray tracing, guys. We're talking about $250 GPU doing this good. It's really something. Now I try overdrive, and this is when I miss that we could use some XeSS, frame generation, because I think we could get a very nice performance out of this car. Here we are using 1080p XeSS quality overdrive preset, and we are above 30 FPS. If that's something you can tolerate, then you can, have a very nice experience on levels that are higher than any console can provide you. Maybe we could have gone 1440p with an XeSL performance level overdrive preset, but I didn't want to get to that point. But I think if we had XeSS frame generation in this game, it would be really cool. But unfortunately we don't. But I still think this is a very nice result, and I wasn't expecting it to even work at all, to be honest. I thought it was going to be much worse, and I was surprised. Now, Metro Exodus, I lost my save when I was very far away, and that really put me down. So I'm just testing some part of the game from the beginning, and as you can see here, this is Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition, 1440p Ultra settings. And yeah, we're not at 60. I think if I lower the settings we could, but the problem is this game doesn't support like any sort of reconstruction technique other than DLSS, so we cannot. I think if this game adopted XeSS, which it will not after many years that have passed, we will easily get those 60 FPS. So maybe we have to lower the settings or play at 1080p, but the important part is you can play this fully ray traced game with an ARC B580, no issues whatsoever. So that's a very good result in my opinion. Okay, Alan Wake 2, we know, is another one of those games that not many GPUs are going to be able to run correctly, especially from the 10 series, but many new GPUs also really have a big problem. And now I'm running this game at 1440p on balance setting, which I'm not quite sure what it means. I think it's a lower resolution, and I don't know who's doing the scaling because the FSR was toggle. It's like the game doesn't realize that I can use FSR with this GPU, so I don't know what sort of technology it's using. Maybe TAA. I'm not quite sure here, to be honest, because nothing was set. But well, you can see here 1440p balance with low preset, and we are getting above 60 FPS. And remember, this is one of like the worst case scenarios. As you know, this is one of those areas of the game that is very heavy. So the results are much better than what I was expecting, considering the results of other GPU in its range on this game. So I wanted to push it a little bit more. Like, okay, what if I don't mind playing like a 30 FPS? So for a 30 FPS, you can go to 1440p, still keep balance, medium preset, and activate RT. So that's not a very bad result when you think about it. All the work that the current gen consoles do, this RT low is quite heavy, and you need like a PlayStation 5 Pro to even be able to activate that. Yes, it's true, it upscales to 4K instead, but it's not like a very good amazing upscaling. But in this case, you're having a ray tracing and a medium preset with a $250 GPU, which is a very good result for 30 FPS. So I wouldn't call these a bad results. I wish the game supported XeSS or some other technology, and maybe we will have better results or better frame rate at the end. But still, I think this is a very nice result for a game that could improve performance in a while. Okay, now here we are with Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. This is, I think, one I selected a very bad part of the gameplay. I played for a while, but I don't know. I just selected this and they're doing nothing for a little bit. But anyway, 1440p XeSS balance, high settings, okay? I think I could have been more aggressive with the XeSS, or maybe lower the settings a little bit to be sure to always maintain 60 FPS, because the game does go a little bit lower, as you can see, but it will depend on your tolerance. You know, I think this is a good middle point, because sometimes you're going to be above, sometimes you're going to be under, but I don't think it's that noticeable, and you're going to have a very good image quality. You know, a game that looks phenomenal, you know, very good frame rate. So it depends on exactly what's the balance you're trying to achieve. So for my point of view, this is a win for Avatar and the Intel B580. Now this is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and I have to be honest, this is not the best place to test this GPU, but I'm playing the game and I didn't want to, you know, go too far or spoil myself. So this is where I am at the moment, and as you can see here, at 1440p medium settings, which I think is a very good, because low looks quite different, and I think medium settings as well, but if you go to high settings, then it goes under 60, and you can see here that we keep 80 FPS, which from my point of view is a very good result. However, I am disappointed that the game does not allow me to activate any sort of path trace with this GPU, even though I have 12 gigabytes, because I think it doesn't really realize that this GPU is capable of, even if it had 12 gigabytes. The other problem is that this game didn't allow me to use any type of dynamic resolution scaling, and doesn't support any other scaling other than DLSS. They are going to be adding FSR in the future, is that what the developer said. I hope they add also the other technologies like XeSS and XeSS frame generation, the same FSR frame generation, because then, and they fix the problem with path tracing, then I think we can get this game a much better result than we're getting now, and play a much better quality and frame rate. Now I tested some emulation, because why not? The only emulation I tested is with the RPSS3, because this is one of the heaviest emulators out there, besides the other one that we cannot name, Nintendo, because you know how it is. But anyway, here we are testing with MotorStorm Pacific Rift at 1440p, 60 FPS, and I think we could have gone maybe 4K, but I didn't want to push it too hard. In this case, just to be sure to maintain that 60 FPS. Remember, this game was locked at 30 on the PlayStation 3, and we use a patch here to go to 60. So that's a very good result, if you ask me. And there is no glitches or wrong rendering, other than maybe whatever the actual emulator generates, but I don't see anything particularly wrong or different to respect to playing with a normal Nvidia card. And as you can see, the results is very good, and the GPU is not even being fully utilized. So that's a great result here. And to test this, I obviously couldn't just test Pacific Monster Store. I wanted to test something heavier on the same emulator, and in this case, the other game I tested is the God of War 3 game. That is here. And yeah, initially you can see that the game stops and it's a little bit slow, and it may look like it's not emulating correctly, but that's more because of shader compilation. When the shader have compiled, you can see here that the game is keeping around 30 FPS or above, which is a very good result if you ask me, because this is a very heavy game, and even on my RTX 4090 I don't get 60 FPS. Okay, it will go up and down, and that's more of a problem of the emulator. As you can see, the GPU is not being completely utilized. It's like a 50%, so it means there is a lot of space still to grow. This is a problem more with the emulator, but the fact is that you can play this game at the original frame rate, which is 30 FPS, which the GPU was able to maintain very well, at least in this initial sum. So as you can see, Intel ARC B580 will you know, work very well for your emulation needs on any system, because GameCube, PlayStation 2, Wii U, and the rest of them are, I did test, and they work well, but I didn't thought it was necessary to test them here, because we know how they are. Okay guys, as you saw, I think this GPU is really awesome. I really like the performance. I think the 12 gigabytes of VRAM are going to give this car a much longer life than an RTX 4060 or even a 5060, if that's going to be true, or whatever AMD puts out. I hope AMD is not putting any 8 gigabyte GPU, honestly. But this car, I think, is really, really good. I've never been so excited. I have not been this excited in a long while, okay, for a GPU or new hardware product. And I have to give kudos in that sense to Intel for that. The first thing you can see here is that it uses only one 8-pin connector, so you won't need like a lot of power for this. I will say 500 watts should be more than enough for this GPU. But not just that, you saw the temperatures in the benchmark. The temperatures were awesome. I don't think I saw too much going over 60 degrees. I don't think so. But the thing is that it achieved those temperatures without even making a peep. There is no noise. The fans are always spinning, but very quiet. Almost you cannot hear it. So I don't think anyone putting this in their computer are going to make them any loud. This thing is quiet, guys. It really is quiet, so it's awesome. You never hear it. So this is a very nice achievement. Nice temperatures without the noise. That's very good, Intel. I give you my thumbs up. Consumption wise, it's a little bit on the high side, but I don't know if that's something you care. I normally don't. I have a 4090 for myself, which says that I don't care about. I care about the performance, and I think it could be better. Yes, it could, but it's much better than the A750 was at the time. However, there are a couple of caveats, okay? This is not a perfect GPU, okay? Maybe the reason I'm so excited is because of the great price performance, but there are some things you have to there are some things you need to have in mind before buying an Intel GPU, okay? Because there are things that you need to understand before you do, depending on your needs. The first thing is that you need resizable bar. So you need to be sure that your CPU and motherboard support resizable bar, because this needs it, okay? It's not an option. It's not to gain a little bit of frame. No, if you don't have resizable bar, you're going to lose like 50% of the performance of the GPU. So you do need resizable bar, okay? Do not buy this GPU if you don't have resizable bar. That's the first requirement for this GPU. Second, if your main goal is to play all games like DirectX 9, 8, 10, or even some 11 titles, please check before you buy if the games you want to play run well on this GPU. As we saw, some of the games run poorly. Some of them run amazing, but some others run poorly. And that's because, well, whatever is happening, Intel clearly hasn't, been able to fix the issue with all of the games. Even I think it's going better. It's still not perfect. Batman Arkham Knight doesn't even start. And that's a game that had that issue on the previous Intel generation. So that's something that has not fixed at all. And that's an issue, okay? Depending on what you want to play. If you are going to be playing new games, okay. But if you're going to be playing old games, and when I say old, once again, I'm talking 8-10 years old games. And you better check to see if somebody have tested those, and you can be sure you can play with this card, okay? Because some games are not going to go well, and some other are not even going to start. There are ways around it, okay? Like Batman, you can make it run with the XVK, for example. It will run, but that's not how I test, because I think the card has to run the game without you having to mess up with anything. If you like to do, tinkering around and so on, that's fine, that's cool, and you can do it. But I test the way it comes, and normal, it doesn't start, okay? So the other problem I saw with this car is a good and a bad problem at the same time, because what I'm trying to say is that the car has some weird behavior performance-wise. What I mean with that is that some games, you expect certain performance, and then it doesn't give that performance back to you. It's like, why? Okay, and you don't know if because the game doesn't support this GPU very well, or the driver of the Intel is not that well for this GPU. One good example is, for example, Spider-Man. Okay, you see, this car is very good for ray tracing. We have tested that. We have seen that it's very good for ray tracing. But then you play Spider-Man with ray tracing, and the performance is not very good, and on Ratchet & Clank is horrible. Like, if you activate even in the lowest setting any ray tracing settings, the frame rate tanks, and I'm not even saying that it's playable, but low. No. It's like 5 to 10 FPS for some reason. Then you remove ray tracing and it goes above 70 FPS. So there is something quite weird there, and that's why I say that there is performance issues. Also, because this card seems to have been created with 1440p in mind, because if a 1440p a game is running in a certain way, you expect that by going to 1080p you will gain a lot more performance, but sometimes that performance is very tiny. Yes, you gain performance, but not as much as it should, relatively talking. When we tested with other GPUs that you're supposed to get like 20 or 30% more performance, and sometimes you only get like 5 or to 10. Okay, it's not taking the full power of the GPU when you go to 1080p on some games. So that could be good if you are playing at 1440p, but if you want to get the most of the FPS, sometimes 1080p won't really make that much of a difference. So it's a weird behavior there. So there are positives and negatives in that sense. And last thing is that I think Intel needs to give more support, and in terms of Intel's and the developers. Even though most of the games had XeSS, which is a good thing. Even all games, they are supporting the technology and so on, which is a very good that XeSS is so well now supported on many games, not all of them, but on many games. The problem is that the GPU comes to the market with XeSS2 frame generation and XLL, which is the technology for low latency when you activate frame generation. But there is one game that I don't have, that is the only game that supports this, which is Formula 1 2024. And I believe that there should be at least 2 or 3 games when this thing launches that you can test this technology. No other game has those, and I couldn't test them for that reason, because there is not enough support. And I think Intel needs to work closer with developer to fix problems like the ones I'm describing in the Insomniac title, because they happen in both Ratchet & Clank and Spider-Man. Even though Spider-Man was playable with ray tracing, the performance was very low compared to other GPUs in its class. So I think that there are still some quirks and caveats to work with, but I hope that people can see the value that the Intel B580 propose here, and they start buying it so much that developers understand that they need to give better support, but also that Intel now sees that people are interested in their product and they start investing more in them, like Nvidia and AMD do, working closely with the developers. So I need Intel to work closer with the developers to support more and to improve the drivers, and see that it's viable, because the better this card does, obviously the better it's going to be for us, the better it's going to be for Intel, and the better it's going to do for the market, which we need more competition, because now Nvidia owns 90% of the market. Okay, so I think in the sub $300 category, this could be an amazing budget card, and I am such in love with this thing that honestly I think it's one of the most exciting GPU releases in many years. So yeah, there you go guys. I hope you like this video. I know it's very long, but I wanted to be very truthful with it. So hope that you enjoyed this video, that you subscribe, like it, and share it with everyone. Thank you very much, and as always, see you in the next video.